Have you ever wondered why men are often held responsible for pregnancies but not for decisions related to abortion? It's a question that's been asked time and time again, in hushed whispers and heated debates, in courtrooms and in living rooms across the world. This paradox of responsibility isn't just a simple disagreement. It's a complex issue that resides at the intersection of societal expectations, historical norms, and gender roles. Let's take a moment to untangle this web. Picture a scale. On one side, we have the responsibility of men towards pregnancy. Society often holds them accountable for the conception, expecting them to step up and share the burden. Whether it's moral support, financial assistance, or simply being there for the mother, men are expected to participate in the pregnancy journey. Now let's look at the other side of the scale, the decision-making process surrounding abortion. Suddenly, the scale tips. The weight of the decision, the responsibility of choice, it all seems to fall squarely on the woman's shoulders. It's her body, her risk, and ultimately her decision. At least that's what society seems to dictate. So where does the man fit in this picture? Why is it that his responsibility appears to end where her autonomy begins? It's a paradox that's been ingrained in our societies, a result of centuries-old norms and expectations. Men are involved in the conception and are expected to share the pregnancy journey, but when it comes to making decisions about abortion, they often find themselves on the sidelines. This paradox isn't just about the distribution of responsibility. It's a reflection of the power dynamics and gender roles that have shaped our societies. It's about the perception of men as providers and protectors, and women as caregivers and decision makers. It's about the struggle between autonomy and shared responsibility, between individual rights and societal norms. This paradox of responsibility is more than just a question. It's a mirror reflecting the complexities of our societies. It's a conversation that needs to be had, a narrative that needs to be explored. So let's delve deeper into the historical, legal, and ethical reasons behind this disparity. Let's start a conversation that challenges the status quo and pushes the boundaries of our understanding. Let's challenge the paradox of responsibility. Historically, societies have placed the responsibility of child rearing on women. This isn't just a casual observation, but a deeply ingrained societal norm that has been passed down through generations. It's rooted in traditional gender roles that have, for centuries, dictated the division of labor within families and communities. In many cultures around the globe, women were, and in some places continue to be, primarily associated with the domestic sphere. This included bearing and rearing children, while men were seen as providers, associated with the public realm of work and politics. This division was seen as natural, based on the biological differences between the sexes, with women's ability to give birth being a key factor. Over time, these traditional roles have influenced societal perceptions of responsibility in pregnancies. The responsibility of childbearing and child-rearing was placed on women, while men's roles were often limited to that of a provider. This created a societal expectation for women to bear the sole burden of pregnancy, while men were often absolved from the intricacies of this process. But it's important to note that these norms weren't universal. In some societies, men were expected to be actively involved in child rearing, and in others, women also had significant roles outside the household. However, the dominant narrative has often sidelined these variations. Fast forward to the present day, and we see these historical norms continuing to shape attitudes. Despite significant strides towards gender equality, the remnants of these traditional roles persist. They subtly permeate our societal consciousness, influencing our views on men's and women's roles in pregnancies. In the context of abortion, this historical backdrop plays a crucial role. The notion of women as primary caregivers often translates into the perception that decisions about pregnancy, including abortion, should be a woman's prerogative. This leaves men out of the equation, leading to the paradoxical situation where they are held responsible for pregnancies, but not for decisions related to abortion. But what about the legal perspective? Let's investigate. Legally, the situation is complex. Diving into the legal landscape surrounding pregnancies and abortions, we find ourselves in a maze of court cases and laws that have shaped the current status quo. In the United States, the landmark decision of Roe v. Wade in 1973 established a woman's constitutional right to an abortion. This ruling affirmed a woman's autonomy over her body, but it left little room for a man's role or rights in the decision-making process. Paternity laws, on the other hand, have defined men's responsibilities in pregnancies. For instance, in many jurisdictions, a man can be legally compelled to provide financial support for a child, even if the pregnancy was unplanned or unwanted. This obligation underscores the societal expectation that men should be held accountable for the consequences of their sexual actions. However, men's rights in the context of abortion are far less clear. In the landmark case of Planned Parenthood v. Casey in 1992, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that a woman is not obligated to inform her partner about her intention to have an abortion. This ruling further emphasized the notion that the decision to terminate a pregnancy is primarily a woman's prerogative. This disconnect between the legal expectations for men in pregnancies and abortions has sparked much debate. Some argue for a financial abortion option where a man could legally absolve himself of financial responsibility for a child, mirroring a woman's right to a physical abortion. Critics of this concept believe it could lead to a rise in child poverty and neglect. So, legally speaking, men are held responsible for pregnancies, but have little say in decisions related to abortion. This disparity is largely due to the legal recognition of a woman's bodily autonomy, coupled with societal norms that place the financial burden of child-rearing on men. Now that we've covered the legal aspect, let's delve into the ethical considerations. Ethically, the question of responsibility in pregnancies and abortions is fraught with complexities. It's a tightrope walk, balancing individual rights, shared responsibilities, and societal norms. Let's unpack this a bit. First, let's examine the principle of bodily autonomy. This is the idea that each person has the right to control what happens to their own body. In the context of pregnancy and abortion, this principle is often cited to argue that women, and only women, have the right to decide whether to continue or terminate a pregnancy because it's their bodies that are directly involved. This seems fair, doesn't it? But then, there's the counter-argument from the perspective of paternal rights. Advocates of this perspective argue that since both parties contributed to the creation of the potential new life, both should have a say in decisions affecting its future. This viewpoint raises the question, should men have a legally recognized voice in the decision to abort? Navigating these opposing viewpoints is no easy task, and it gets even more complex when we factor in the moral obligations of both parties. Should men be expected to shoulder an equal share of the responsibility for a pregnancy that they helped to create? And if so, does this responsibility extend to having a say in decisions about abortion? This is where the waters get murky. On one hand, it seems fair that if men are expected to share in the responsibilities of parenting, they should also have a say in decisions about whether to become a parent in the first place. On the other hand, any move to give men a legal voice in abortion decisions could be seen as an infringement on women's bodily autonomy. These ethical dilemmas highlight the complexities of the issue and underscore the need for a balanced approach that respects both the rights of women to control their own bodies and the interests of men in decisions that could significantly impact their lives. With these ethical considerations in mind, let's summarize the main points. We've covered a lot of ground, so let's recap the key points. We started with the paradox of responsibility, highlighting the societal expectation that men shoulder the responsibility for pregnancies, but are often excluded from decisions related to abortion. This disparity is not a simple black and white issue, but is deeply entangled in societal norms and expectations. Diving into the historical background, we discovered how traditional gender roles have played a significant part in creating this imbalance. Historically, women have been seen as the primary caregivers, a view that extends to pregnancies. Men, on the other hand, have often been seen as the providers, distanced from the intimate process of childbirth. This historical context has contributed to the common perception that the responsibility for pregnancy lies primarily with women. From there, we navigated the legal landscape, exploring how laws around the world have been designed with this bias in mind. In many places, the law enforces the idea that the decision to continue or terminate a pregnancy is solely a woman's right. While this approach is designed to empower women, it inadvertently reinforces the notion that men are secondary participants in reproductive matters. We then delved into the ethical dimensions of this issue to understand why men's input in abortion decisions is often dismissed. The crux of the argument rests on the premise that since women bear the physical burden of pregnancy, they should have the ultimate say in decisions related to it. While this argument is compelling, it also perpetuates the idea that men's roles in pregnancies are peripheral at best. In summary, this disparity in responsibility between men and women in the context of pregnancy and abortion is rooted in historical, legal, and ethical factors. These factors intertwine to create a society where men are held responsible for pregnancies but often excluded from decisions related to abortion. We hope this discussion has given you some food for thought. Remember, these are complex issues with no easy answers. If today's discussion sparked a new thought or challenged your existing views, don't let the conversation end here. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to join our community of thinkers and explorers. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.